Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The stream should now be up and running, and if it is, hopefully everybody's seeing this, since this is the first time I will attempt to be streaming something like this. So as you can tell by the title, this is Mission Suction Sat, and the reason for that particular name is I'm launching a mission for VACCO Advanced Suction Systems, where they have requested for me to launch a satellite into an equatorial orbit within Kerbal. Now, this is a mission that this is the second time I've launched this model of this rocket. This is called the Euroke rocket. It consists of two stages, the lower stage and the higher stage, upper stage, I guess I should say. And this is supposed to be a fully reusable rocket. Now you can see the air brakes on the first stage, which is separated here by a sort of interstage. And this first stage is composed of 4 vector engines. Now these 4 vector engines will carry this satellite to a suborbital trajectory, and once it runs out of fuel, this will then separate, and we will take the first stage down to the ground. After we do that, we will use fMRS to restore our save with the upper stage and our payload, and with that we will bring it to an equatorial orbit around Kerbal, and then we shall attempt to bring the second stage back to Kerbal. Now the way we're going to be doing that is on the top within this fairing. You can't see that, but right now there is a heat shield there to protect it upon re-entry, and we're going to be doing multiple re-entries within Kerbal's atmosphere and then leaving again. And on the last one, we shall attempt to land on the ground using 8 parachutes. So we'll quickly make a quick save right now, and the countdown will begin shortly. Meanwhile, please enjoy the music one more time. And we are back. And I think that we are ready to launch the SuctionSat satellite atop the Euroke rocket. Now, the way that we will be doing this is we shall do a straight launch, and once we reach 1 kilometer above sea level, we will begin turning east. Now, the reason why we will be doing this is this will give our rocket a significant boost, and it will use much less energy and fuel to get up to Kerbal orbit. So our team has just informed us that the rocket is ready to go. So the countdown will now begin. 10, 9, 8, 7, booster ignition 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff for the Euro-K rocket carrying the suction satellite. So as you can see, this rocket is a little bit unstable as it wobbles, and that shall hopefully be fixed as new designs are introduced to this rocket. And now, since we have reached 1 kilometer, we will be starting our gravity turn. Once again, this is to save on fuel, and this will greatly reduce the amount of energy needed to actually get into Kerbal orbit. So if this mission happens to fail, a stream will begin around this same time tomorrow, attempting to launch this rocket once more for the same mission. Now, as you can see, the flying of this rocket is a bit, it's a bit jumpy, and that's because this is not automatic like most rocket systems. This is manual control. And I'll tell you, if you have ever tried to control a rocket at the same time as you are speaking, it is not a fun job. So as the rocket proceeds up through the atmosphere, it continues to change its path as the computers attempt to point it prograde, and I attempt to get it back in line with this. So now we're on a nominal trajectory. We're proceeding as planned, going directly on the prograde marker as we pass through the many different layers of the atmosphere. Now you can see the rocket is moving back and forth, and the gimbals on the vector engines are attempting to restore it back to its original position. So to fix that, we will attempt to lower the thrust and not play around with the systems as much. So the reason for all of this is it's all trying to fix it because we're using SAS, this is kind of embarrassing. I forgot what it stands for. But yeah, so now we have main engine cutoff and stage separation. Now we have a clean stage separation, and we will now follow the first stage on its path back down to Kerbal. So what we will do is we will point it prograde. We will open up the air brakes by pressing brakes up here. And now we will wait for it to re-enter the atmosphere and open up its parachutes. Now you can see that the highest point in our orbit, also called the apoapsis, is at 61 kilometers right now. And with that, we will attempt to see what happens to the rocket as it re-enters the atmosphere. So this has only been done once before on our previous tests, where we were trying to send a satellite up into a polar orbit around Kerbal. So we have around 49 seconds until it reaches its apoapsis, so I think a little bit of time skip is necessary at this portion, as are many time skips. So 2 seconds until apoapsis, and we've just reached apoapsis. So now our vertical speed will begin to go down as we descend down through the atmosphere. Currently, our rocket has all control, and as we go down, we shall retain that control due to the two large reaction wheels that have been placed up on the top of the rocket, which are going to be used to keep it stable, as well as the air brakes. They will be used to, first of all, brake the rocket. Will stop the rocket, not like break it. And they are also used to somewhat maneuver the rocket as it re-enters the atmosphere. So time warp has been activated again, 4 times warp. And as you can see now, with time warp off, you'll be able to tell that our rocket is currently experiencing re-entry heating. Now, this process usually does not harm this design of the rocket, especially since the vector engines have been made to sustain higher heat than this. So if you look down here at the surface speed, you will be able to tell that around 1000 meters per second, the re-entry heating stops and our rocket is fine. As you can see, we've just passed 900 meters per second, and we have now gotten a nominal trajectory down to the ground. And the parachutes have been staged, so they will open when they are ready. Right as I said that, the parachutes have opened. So now they are half deployed, which means that they are not slowing us down necessarily enough to land, but they are just slowing us down enough that they can open up once they reach 1000 meters above sea level. So a little bit more time skip is necessary until this reaches 1000, and when it does, the parachutes shall fully deploy and bring us to around a speed of 6 meters per second. So now we've just reached 1000 meters, and our speed has been lowered down to 8.5 meters per second, which is different than what I had been expecting, but it should still work. And now we just have to coast down to the ground, and for that, once again, we have time warp. Now this is landing in a somewhat tricky spot, so we will just have to hope that the angle is not too steep and that this rocket will stick the landing. If it doesn't, oh well. So, turning off SAS so that the engines don't move. It seems that we are fine. So now we will send our rescue teams to recover this rocket and prepare it to be reused one more time. And with that, we're going to jump back to our main mission. And we have second engine activation. This engine is the Rhino liquid fuel engine, and it will burn. It's the most efficient engine for this stage that we have found. And our apoapsis, once it reaches 100 kilometers, we will have SECO, which is second engine cutoff. Right there, we have just reached SECO, and that means that our second engine will cut off until we reach our periapsis. Sorry, I apologize. Our apoapsis, where we will burn to maintain a full Kerbal orbit, and then we will extend that orbit to reach these two points. Our apoapsis shall be 5,682,000 meters, and our periapsis will be 4,812,000 meters. So we will now set a maneuver above the ground, and once we do this, we are now able to point our rocket towards the maneuver node, and since we are now up in space, I will quickly quick save, and we can now deploy the fairing. And you can see that the fairing clearly deploys, and this is our satellite that we are launching for the suction company. So we will extend these two solar panels, and now once both of them deploy, we will be able to time warp quickly to our apoapsis. So they have just deployed, so we will time skip. It seems that we've missed our burn time, but that is okay, since usually it doesn't make that much of a difference if you are burning to make an orbit around the planet. So now we have achieved an orbit around Kerbal with an apoapsis of 103,000 meters and 99,000 meters as our periapsis. So we will proceed to burn. We will proceed to make another maneuver node right here, so that we are able to burn, so our periapsis can match that of our designated orbit. And by adjusting it a little bit, we can get it right on point. And you can see that there's still somewhat of a space, so we will continue to burn prograde here, just like that. And now we will aim to a maneuver node, and we will continue to coast until we reach our maneuver node. So now you can't tell very well, but previously I had mentioned that we have a heat shield on the top of the second stage, so that we are able to recover it. Now this is the heat shield I was talking about. There's a decoupler here that decouples our satellite from the heat shield, and once it does that, this will attempt to return back to Kerbal using the same or a very similar method as the first stage of the Euro-K booster. So now we have 1 minute until we start our burn, and our burn time will take approximately 15 seconds. And that is not including minor adjustments, which we will attempt to make as accurately as possible to get a nice circular orbit. So our burn will now begin. So now we are halfway throughout our burn, and we are approaching Seco one more time. And we have Seco. Not exactly a perfect alignment, but it's very close. And I don't think our customers will be very mad if we get it off by a few kilometers. So what we'll do is burn here, and you can see our orbit is somewhat tilted, so we will attempt to counter that by burning normal. Sorry, no, burning anti-normal. And yeah, so this burn will start in about 3 hours and 1 minute, but luckily we have the power of time skip, and this burn will take 6 seconds. Now after this burn, we will have around 1,050 meters per second, which should be about enough to re-enter the atmosphere and recover this aircraft, or stage. Now what happens is the front heat shield has a limited amount of aviator, which is what keeps it able to re-enter. Now what happens is if we run out of aviator, we will attempt to use the engine as our heat shield, as it can stand, just like the vector engines, it can stand very high heat. So once again we've missed our beginning burn time, but that doesn't really matter, as this will be somewhat accurate. We will now begin the burn of the second engine to attempt to deliver the satellite up to space. So there we go. Now we have a somewhat circular orbit around Kerbal, and now we shall deploy our satellite. We have a good separation, good and clean separation, and the contract has been in fact completed. But that's not the end of the stream. Oh no, it isn't. Now we will attempt to first of all fix this. There we go. Now that we've fixed this up here, down here, since there were some errors, we will make a burn to go back to Kerbin's atmosphere. So the way I'll do that is I'll create a maneuver node that leads us to around 50 kilometers above sea level. Just like that, 50 kilometers right there. So we will aim our maneuver node there, and we will now coast one last time to hopefully do one of our last necessary burns. So quick save right there, and now the start burn timer is rapidly going down, and once it reaches 0 again we will start burning, and with that burn we should be able to enter the atmosphere. So burn in 10 seconds. 5 seconds until the burn. And the burn has begun. And now we have Seco. Our periapsis is around 46 kilometers, but that should be okay for what we're attempting to achieve today. Now, this hasn't been seen very often with rockets, and I'm proud to say that this is hopefully one of the first rockets that is able to do this, at least for now, until we see what kind of technology people come up with. So our rocket will now re-enter the atmosphere very soon, and in preparation for that, it has begun aiming prograde, which is the way that we are traveling, and the heat shield should sustain all of the heat. So I think it would be actually a wise decision to attempt to burn here so that we kill some of our speed and begin lowering the apoapsis to around, we'll say, 100 kilometers. Now this will use most of our fuel, and we will leave around 54 meters per second to spare. 54 meters per second of delta V, which is the potential energy. Now our trajectory seems to be landing exactly on the Kerbal Space Center, and if we're lucky enough, that is what's going to happen. So I see that there are some issues with the stream. While I attempt to figure that out, please enjoy some really nice music one more time. Alright, so it seems that we are now fine, and we can continue on our re-entry into the atmosphere. So as you can see, we are running out of aviator relatively quickly, but our trajectory makes it seem like we will be fine. So our apoapsis is quickly decreasing to 135 kilometers and lower, and hopefully this means that we are good to go, since we are quickly losing speed. Now, if we weren't losing speed, we would just crash into Kerbin and make a big crater. And I don't think that anyone would appreciate their house being blown up like that. So that's not going to happen today. Sadly, I know that many people kind of want to see that happen, but I think that we think that saving money is relatively important here. So it seems that we are slightly off pitch. Instead of traveling prograde, we seem to be traveling at 20 degrees. So that shouldn't affect our course too much, although we have in fact passed the Kerbal Space Center. But hopefully this means that we will still manage to land on a piece of land. Now, this rocket is both equipped for land and water landings, so whatever the case may be, you'll find that it'll work out. But as we look down, you can see that we are approaching land, so that means that we will have a land landing. So the parachutes have now just deployed. And like previously, we will travel down to land. So now once we reach 1000, oh, never mind. Okay, so they seem to have opened up quite early. Now there's an object there, and I think that while we wait, we can attempt to take a look at whatever this object is. So reports have just noticed that it is in fact a single cactus in a land of emptiness. Well, unless you include the giant, rocket that is attempting to land in the middle of it. But other than that, we seem to be fine. So our altitude is now a little bit less than 70 meters. And for that, we will now begin burning to slow ourselves down even more, so that we get the softest touchdown possible. There we go. We've now run out of fuel, and our rocket, as it tips over, the parachutes should stop it from being harmed. Now, that concludes the stream. We have successfully launched and recovered 2 parts of a rocket, and we have left a satellite up in orbit of Kerbin, the satellite being named SuctionSat. Now, it is not visible in the map, but I can assure you that it's definitely in orbit, and we did not lose it. That sounds very suspicious, I know, but we did not lose it, I promise. So, thank you